John Grant here in Los Angeles, and you're live on the 405. SmoosieQ joins us from Twitter. You know her as @SmoosieQ. Her real name is Suzie Moore, and she gave us permission to call her that, so we're going to do that. Her blog is qwithaview.wordpress.com. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you are a lawyer. Are you involved in litigation, or do you, do wills for old people? Or if you want to tell us, what area of law you work in, we're kind of curious.
I do what's called insurance defense litigation.
Okay.
So I try civil lawsuits primarily for defending them. When someone gets sued, we defend them.
Okay. And you're a triathlete. Do you have any tries coming up?
I don't have any scheduled. I have a half marathon scheduled for the fall.
Okay.
I'd like to try and sneak in a triathlon or two this summer, but I just haven't gotten myself signed up for that yet.
Do they do fulls and halves in the heat of the summer in St. Louis? Because I know it gets pretty hot and sticky there, and that's got to be kind of prohibitive.
It definitely does, and no, they generally don't. There's a big one here in April, and then the one I'm signed up for again in the fall is in late October.
Okay. I actually I used to run on the ice and snow back in Wisconsin, 30 miles
Wow.
a week. When I moved to California, I turned into a big fat tub of goo, so go figure. But I've reversed that, so I'm back on the road.
Good
anyway,
for you.
Are you a real Cardinals fan? Has it occurred to St. Louis that the Cards don't really miss Pujols?
I am a huge Cardinals fan. I've been my entire life. My folks are, and that has carried over to me, and I'm trying to instill that in my daughter as well. We were very
Have they got over the Pujols thing?
Well, I don't know if my mom has. I think she
Oh.
felt very, very personally affronted by it, but we were certainly very sad to see him go. He was obviously a very treasured member of the team for many years, but I think it's worked out okay so far. Although we've hit a slump lately, but hopefully we're pulling back out of that. I think they won last night 14-2, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think good organizations don't depend on one guy like that, and certainly, it was sad to see him go, but I would say by the All-Star break, I mean, if he isn't producing for the Angels, the questions about him are going to be, very public and very pervasive. But anyway, I asked this about everybody with a day job. Do you need to be guarded about your relationship between your day job and your political blogging or social media? Do you need to kind of tone it down or turn it off in some situations?
I do to an extent, not within my office. I mean, this is a relatively small office, and we're all very friendly here, so that's not so much the issue. But in terms of dealing with the public, with clients, and kind of the public persona from the legal field, yeah, to an extent.
Okay, but everybody knows that you went to lunch with Mitt. I mean, you're right out in the open on that.
Yes, I was happy to share that.
And I did obviously read your piece, and I agree with almost all of it. I think we all had nagging doubts about Mitt, the Romney care baggage,
Sure.
his inability at times to articulate a real conservative message, gaping holes in his ability to contrast himself with Obama. But I think that's changed, and certainly the polling data. I mean, he's neck and neck in your state last time I looked, in a number of battleground states. Do you think the dam burst with things like, the Scott Walker recall, and suddenly Obama was no longer seen as some sort of, campaign titan?
I think that's played a huge role in it, but I think the dam started bursting a little bit earlier than that, to be honest. Once it became pretty clear to just about everybody that Mitt was the presumptive nominee, people did start coalescing around him, and then I think the Obama camp made some pretty grave mistakes. Whoever's bright idea it was to go after Ann Romney.
That's right. I remember that, yes.
That was a huge, huge mistake because all that did was rally people to her defense and then by extension to Mitt's. I think Obama's continuing to hammer on the, war against private equity and private capitalism is not working well. I was rather distressed back during the primaries when Newt decided to take that route. But in the end, I think that got everyone used to the fact that, hey, this is a serious issue and you don't want to be attacking it from the wrong side. And yet Obama seems hell-bent on continuing to press that. And I don't know that that's working so well for him.
Do you think if Obamacare gets blown out of the water by the Supremes, it's a black eye for Obama, but it's sort of a blessing in disguise for Mitt because it takes the focus off of Romney care? which, love it or leave it, is perfectly legal in the state it's being done, and he can sort of walk away from that and avoid all those comparisons between the two?
Oh, I think it can only be a beneficial thing to Mitt. What it does, first of all, as you pointed out, it puts a black eye on Obama. It takes away his signature piece of legislation and really calls into question the policies and the methods that they've been trying to employ. With Mitt, I've been puzzled all along that he didn't attempt to distance himself from Romney Care because of the negative perception of it. But I guess by the same token, I have to give him a little credit. He owns it. He's stood by it, and I know he does try to make the federalist distinction, if you will, that this was a state issue and this was what they felt was best for their state under the circumstances they were presented with. I don't know how well that sells to most diehard conservatives, but at the same time, I think that he is able to make that distinction, and depending on how the Supreme Court rules, and how they word their ruling, I think he can turn it around to his benefit.
And I liked your observation when you said that Romney was slow and steady. Every day the Obama people need to reel in something someone said, like Biden or Axelrod or Bill Clinton or Cory Booker. Nobody knew who Cory Booker was until he started flinging poo at Obama. So they need a press conference to walk back a previous press conference.
Right.
But nobody in the Mitt camp is doing that.
No.
The best they can try to do is throw Trump on the fire or demand that Mitt repudiate Allen West. Do you think that the campaign machinery is really starting to shine now that they've sort of moved beyond the primary chaff and they can focus strictly on Obama?
I think they are. I think they had some faltering steps through the primaries, but I think that's to be expected. Maybe they've just sort of hit their stride, and I'm not going to be naive enough to assume that there aren't going to be any more gaffes. But he's got pretty savvy people working with him. They obviously have figured out how to employ not only the media itself, but also social media to their benefit. The surrogates he's employing. The Trump thing is, I know it's a little troubling for folks. Donald he's kind of a loose cannon, but I like the fact that the Romney campaign didn't let themselves be pushed around on that issue. I think I would be more troubled if they were wholeheartedly embracing him and saying, yeah, we're 100% behind him, instead of just saying, well, he's entitled to his views. We're not going to step away from him. But I like the fact that they stood up to the calls to do that, because as some others have pointed out, if they start giving in to calls to repudiate and step away from and back away from, anytime someone says something controversial, they're going to get caught up in that game, and it's ridiculous. It's not going to be.
I think the comparisons to McCain sort of stopped there, because certainly when stuff like this was happening, he was sending out his minions to kind of slap that down, and one of his first rules was not to speak ill of the other candidate. I don't really see that. Number one, Mitt doesn't need to do that because that's not happening, but I think that whole strategy is sort of being taken out, and they're going right at Obama, which they need to do.
Well, and the one thing that I noticed yesterday during the speech that I got to listen to, he does go right after Obama, but he's going right after his policies. He's explaining and contrasting his own. So he's doing it in a very effective way, instead of turning it into this sort of personalized mudslinging thing, which certainly he has surrogates that can go that route if they choose to. He's staying the course. He is staying on message, and that is exactly what he needs to do.
Let's talk about vice presidential candidates. The buzz is there's going to be at least a name floated out there this month. I think I saw you tweet yesterday that you like Bobby Jindal. Is my recollection correct on that? Your recollection is correct. I like Bobby Jindal. Would he be your first choice?
No, not necessarily. I've all along felt that Rubio would be the choice, and I'm perfectly fine with that as well. Someone else mentioned that they were convinced it was going to be Jindal, and I expressed I would have no problem with that either. The benefit that Jindal has that Rubio does not, of course, is that he has the executive experience. But I think both of those are shining stars in the Republican Party and would do a great benefit to the Romney campaign.
All right, one question, kind of shifting gears here. You're a lawyer. I think Brett Kimberlin is no different from any other terrorist who exploits freedom to target his enemies. Do you think there's a collision between internet privacy and what it would take to snare Kimberlin and his disciples?
There very well could be. I mean, it's tricky. That the law certainly hasn't even begun to catch up with the technology that we use daily now. There are obvious issues and concerns raised with both the methods that he and or his associates are employing, the squelching of free speech. Granted, they are not government. They are not squelching it in the traditional sense. But the way that they are using these terrorizing tactics to shut people up is very troubling, and obviously in many cases may very well be against the law.
Well, on that note, National Day of Blogger Silence was Friday. SmoosieQ on Twitter, we thank you, and be sure to check out her blog at qwithaview.wordpress.com. Suzie, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
John Grant here in Los Angeles. We'll be back with more on the 405 in just a moment.